Guys, what is up? Welcome to another episode of Maximilian Must Know. This is going to be the video on cologne scents that I told you guys was coming. I want to give you my perspective on cologne scents, since there seems to be so much talk and debate about them in fragrance community. So first, let's talk about how are cologne scents made. Then we're going to talk about the different types of cologne scents out there and my sort of opinion on them. So anyone who thinks that a perfumer or a company smells a fragrance, let's say like Pure Havane or Harrod or Tobacco Vanille or Tuscan Leather, smells it and then says, oh, okay, we can duplicate that just off the smell, is probably mistaken. And there's a really simple reason for that. A fragrance contains 30, 50 materials. Sometimes it contains over 100. And while you might be able to smell 10, 20, maybe 30 of those notes, there's going to be notes that you just can't smell but are in the fragrance as either sort of boosters or fixatives. And what I mean by that is they're in there at such small amounts that they might not be detectable to your nose, but they're helping other notes in there. You should sort of think of it as bitters in like an old fashioned or a Manhattan, or black pepper in a really good soup. When you drink the cocktail or you taste the soup, you don't say, oh wow, great bitters in this, or the pepper here is really good. But if the pepper or the bitters were taken out, you'd notice that they were gone. And so it's the same thing in fragrance. You might smell 9 notes in Tuscan Leather, but if you just tried to use those 9 notes, you might come close. You probably wouldn't, but it definitely won't be a match, and you'd probably be pretty far off. And sometimes there's so many modifiers and so many materials and fragrances that are used in trace amounts. And when I say trace amounts, it could literally be points of a percent, 0.2% in the total formula. It's really hard to identify those just by smelling a fragrance. Are there some people that might be able to do it? Perhaps, but for the most part, what people are doing is they're using a GCMS to figure out what's in a fragrance. And what a GCMS is a gas chromatography mass spectrometry analysis. And what that is you take a sample of whatever fragrance you're interested in and you send it away. And there's places like Perfumer's Apprentice that for $100, they'll tell you the materials that they can identify that's in that fragrance. And they'll tell you about how much is in there relative to other things. That's $100. But you can pay more money. You can pay, $1,000 and get a much better analysis, get every single chemical that's in, every single material that's in a particular fragrance and how much in relation. If you get a really good one of those, you can start to figure out a fragrance, what's in it. And once you start to mess around and play with it, you're going to start to get pretty close to actually recreating that fragrance. So to me, there's 4 types of ways that this is done. First one is these designer brands that do it. Here I have Zara Rich Warm Tobacco, which some people say is a clone of Harrod. They're now coming out with just recently, I believe, came out with a clone of Aventus. They have a clone of La Nuit de l'Homme, I think. They have a ton of clones, Spice Bomb clones. There are other designer companies that do this as well. Rayon, of course, is one. A million companies have tried to knock off GIT. And the way I look at those is there's just nothing you can do about it, right? These are big companies that are sort of knocking off fragrances that other big companies sell, and it's their own war. You can't trademark a formula for a fragrance, so it's just going to happen. You buy whichever you like. I don't think that should bother anyone that a company like Zara is doing that. Then you have niche companies. Here's Xerjoff Naxos 1861. Now this smells very similar to Pure Havane by Terry Mugler, but it's better. It's a better version. And what I think is happening here is, and I'm not 100% sure of this, I'm guessing, is Sergio Momo, who owns Xerjoff, is either telling a perfumer or a compounder or a company like IFF or Robert Tet, hey, I want something like Pure Havane for this fragrance, but I want to use better materials. I want to make a better version of this scent. And so you have a niche version of a popular designer scent. Now that doesn't bother me at all, because I think someone is trying to improve upon a scent that's already out there. And you have to understand too, in circumstances like this, Zara, who Antonio Puig does their fragrances, and Xerjoff are only gonna really, I feel like, replicate something. Certainly Zara, that is a huge seller. And at that point, right, the perfumer, whether it's Jean-Paul Gaultier or Dominique Ropion or whoever, Hugh Clay for Terry Mugler, they've already gotten paid. You know, they've been commissioned to do this fragrance. They got their fee for it. They're not really getting screwed. You know, the company is, they're going to have to compete. I don't think Pure Havan's gonna lose sales because Naxos is like $250. You can get Pure Havan for $50. Might Herod lose sales or Aventus? Probably, maybe a little bit, but probably not. So I don't really think anyone's getting hurt in the first two examples of clone fragrances, okay? And then you have the third version. And here we have Pineapple Vintage, which is done by Parfum Vintage. And I happen to know the gentleman who is behind Parfum Vintage. His name's Damien. He's a great guy. He's in a perfume group that I'm in. And I know him well. He sort of talked to me why he does this. And what he's doing, he's looking at fragrances like Aventus and La Nuit de l'Homme, and his newest one, I believe, is Straight to Heaven by Killian. He has some other ones in the works. And what he's actually trying to do is just trying to improve formulations of fragrances so that they last longer. And he's working really hard to do that. I think he uses the GCMS as well. And then he's trying to put better notes in there, better materials, and make almost artisan versions of popular fragrances. So like with La Nuit de l'Homme, he wanted to do the 2007 or pre-reformulation version where he could really get the fragrance to last. And then Straight to Heaven, he really wanted the rum note to extend. So he's really sort of doing a little bit of reverse engineering to quietly and slowly make better versions of the fragrances. I look at him as a true artisan and a craftsman, so that doesn't bother me as well. I think that's probably a good thing. And I think, I could be wrong, some of his versions of the scents are actually more expensive than their counterparts. Not in the, certainly not in the Parfums Vintage or Straight to Heaven knockoff, but I believe the La Nuit de l'Homme one is. So craftsman trying to do a good thing. Hopefully he'll do some original scents because he's super talented, and I'd like to see what he can do on his own. Then we have the final group here. We have the Doup Luxe Opulent, clone of Xerjoff Richwood. I did a review on this. I like this. And the Alexandria. I don't know anything about Alexandria. I have not tried one of their fragrances. I've seen the gentleman who runs it in the groups talking and stuff like that. Don't know him. No Masham. That's the only guy I know from Doup really well. He seems like a great guy. Nothing but respect for him. He's been a total gentleman to me. Here's my thoughts on the Doup Alexandria thing. I don't know whether what Doup and Alexandria are doing is what these three guys the first three are doing, or if they're literally, there's no skill here at all. They're just buying Middle Eastern oils, diluting them, and selling them off. Now, if they're doing that, and they're knocking off the same fragrances, look, I guess it's a little annoying because Masham, he called himself a master perfumer. So I would hope he is doing the perfuming there if you're going to call yourself a master perfumer. You don't want to use deception when talking about your company or your background, right? So if they're just getting oils and diluting them and selling them, I feel like that's, I mean, look, as a business person, as a capitalist at heart, libertarian, which I kind of consider myself, you make your money however you can, as long as you're not out there hurting anyone else, right? And so I can't knock it. But here's where it gets a little bit dicey. What if these companies start doing fragrances from smaller guys out there? The imaginary authors, the zoologists. I know Victor's not a perfumer, but the guy, this is a guy who does all the work himself, basically, minus the perfuming. These smaller companies, and then I think I'd have a big problem with it, and only because, starting to become a perfumer, I always think about how much would I sell my fragrances for. And let's say I decide to sell my fragrances for, I don't know, I think maybe I want to do 30 ml for 60 or 70 bucks. That's probably where I'm leaning. Now you might look at that and say, well, geez, Max's product only costs 20 bucks for 30 ml. So Max is making 40, 50 bucks every time he sells us a bottle. But that really couldn't be further from the truth, because a perfumer who does everything by himself, I can just speak personally for me, I've been working on this the last year. I've spent an amazing amount of money on materials and, you know, pipettes and oil and alcohol and scales and bottles. But then the amount of time, I must have spent 1,000 hours without making a dime. So now you spend all that time and all that money and you come up with something that is big, right? You're Josh and you made a Slow Explosions or a Memoirs of a Trespasser, and then some company does a, some Middle Eastern company or European company does a GCMS and makes an oil, and then Masham or one of these guys import it, dilute it, and sell it for less, or write about what you're doing it, but they make it a stronger concentration. That seems shitty to me, right? Like, am I crazy? And the dude doing it isn't really a craftsman. He hasn't, doesn't know the difference from using, you know, you've messed around and found the right rose to use in that specific fragrance. You understand why you can't use Vanilla Absolute because of the price spike and the ruined vanilla harvest, so you had to use vanilla. You understand why you did everything. And someone's out there just profiting off all that knowledge and hard work. That's not cool. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference when it's happening to, you know, Dominic Ropion and Inter Parfums or one of these people. And maybe there shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm really not being right in saying it's okay for it to happen to them. But I feel like there's just a difference between an artisan trying to make a product better and someone ripping off someone's ideas and undercutting them and all the hard work that person's done. So I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if it ever will be fixed. I think thankfully so far we haven't seen one of these companies knock off a small indie, you know, a Christy Michelle, a Sarah McCartney, a Josh Lobb, a Josh Meyer. You know, we haven't seen that yet, but is it coming? And if it is, it's not good. It's not good, because what's going to happen is it's going to really make people think twice before the in-home perfumer does all that work and spends all that money. So I know this is a longer video than usual, but I really thought this through, and I wanted to give a different perspective on it and really think about the pros and cons. And for the most part, I don't think it's a bad thing as long as the intentions are right and you're careful about it. But in the flip side, I think you have to be careful about the long-term ramifications doing this can have. I think it can stifle the creativity of the people who are really driving the creativity behind perfumery right now, and that's a little bit worrisome. So I would love to hear your opinions on this. Please post below. Let me know if you think I'm crazy, if I made some sense, or you halfway agree with me, or you halfway don't agree with me. Let me know. I really want to know what other people, especially my subscribers, think about this matter, and I appreciate all your thoughts. There will be a review coming this week. I'm going to hope to get another video, 2 videos in before the end of this week, but definitely the review will be there. And you know, obviously wish you and your families all very, very happy holidays. I'll see you again real soon. My name obviously is Maximilian, and I must know. Peace. Just me.